Good day, my friends. Well, today we're going to take a second look at the Breuer 4, the new release from AK Interactive, the rail shunter. And in this episode, well, we're going to concentrate more on the finishing and painting. In the first episode, please go back and take a look at that if you'd like to look at the construction sequences. Now that I have the construction complete, I can go ahead and move on to the fun part, and that would be the painting and weathering. For the base colors, I'm going to be using real colors. Now, as I start moving on to the weathering process here, I'm going to change things up a bit. I don't know about you, but I really like to kind of tackle each project with a little bit of a different approach. And for this approach on this model, I chose to use AK Gen 3s as my primary weathering medium here. So I'll be using the Generation 3 acrylics to create my rain marks, my scuffs, my drips, my stains, all those types of very basic weathering. I understand that there might be some hesitancy in using acrylic paints as your primary weathering tool, but really the process is basically the same as, say, maybe if you're painting a figure. Just a number of thin coats, build up the effect slowly, and you should have no issues at all. Now, just because I started using the acrylic paints for my weathering doesn't mean I'm going to be limited to only using acrylic paints. I'm going to be using a variety of different types of materials here to create my effects. Next up on my list, well, I'm going to start using some 502 Abteilung paints. Now, I'm going to get these prepared by putting a little bit on cardboard, just to allow some of that extra oils to seep out before I start using them. I enjoy the combination of using acrylics and oils together because while I've created my basic effects with the acrylic paints, now I can soften some of those effects using the oils. I can enhance or discolor some of these different areas using the oil paints, and even create new effects using the 502 Abteilung oils. Once again, I can see where there might be some hesitancy about using oil paints. Well, put that aside because it could not be easier. As you can see in this case, I'm using some oil paints just to profile some of those window ledges around the areas there, add some depth and some shadow. In other areas, I'll add some different colors to create some different diffusion and effects and staining. Speaking of different materials and different effects, well, I've really come to enjoy these new inks. And for this, I'm using them similar to what you would say as a panel liner. So the inks work great. They're very thin already, just straight from the bottle. Just a little bit in some of these corners, just to really deepen these shadows and even add some extra stains or different types of, say, wet effects or grease effects. As you might recall from the first episode, we looked through the instruction booklet and there were some sections of track, so that could be used for a small diorama. And of course, we're going to do that here as well. So the next part of this episode, well, we're going to be making a small scenic base. First thing we do is clip out the tracks from the sprues. With those rails cut out, I've applied them onto some insulation foam to make a small base. Now I'm just applying a bit of railroad ballast using white glue to adhere the railroad ballast in place. Next, for the groundwork, I'm going to be using AK Terrain's dry ground and dark earth. Once again, very easy process, just using a small spatula. I'm going to kind of spread these two colors around. I'll use a little bit of water just to kind of aid in the flow of this and just kind of build up this groundwork slowly but surely. I'll allow this paste, the AK Terrains, to dry overnight just to get good and cured. And now, in the next morning, let's start adding some weathering effects to this small base. So here we are on the next day, and let's start weathering out the base. First thing I want to do is deepen some of these shadows right around the rails and the tracks here, just with some AK Wargame washes. This happens to be a black color, just kind of applying that to the surface and allowing it to flow across the gravel bed. Let's add a few rust effects using liquid pigments. We'll just apply thin washes of this over the rails here just to give them a little bit of a brighter appearance, a little more of a rusty appearance. And then finally, one last touch here. We want to brighten up some of these rocks, give it a little bit of definition, and for that we'll be returning back to the AK Gen 3 acrylics and literally just picking out the top edges of some of these rocks, some of these edges here, just to brighten up the appearance of this scenic base. And now we start to come to the conclusion of this project, and I really encourage you, if you haven't seen the first episode, that had to do with the opening of the box and the construction, and now the second episode is the painting and the making of the small scenic base. Please watch them both together. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Until the next time, my friends, take care and happy modeling.